to the show. Ain't Gonna Hurt Nobody podcast, episode 13.
13.
Lucky number 13.
We're a teenager now.
Still growing. So for today's show, guys, we're going to get right into it. You know, one of the things that we wanted to examine are friendships and the circles and those we keep around us, and how do we place people into certain categories. You know, what really got us thinking about this topic is our son coming home from school and letting us know that his mama and dad were his best friends, along with his little sister, along with 6 other kids from school. And what was crazy to us is like, wait a minute, how are we all at the same level? We've known you for 4 years. You literally just met this kid 2 weeks ago, but you've put them at the same level. And it really got us thinking, like, man, like, do we do that as adults? Do we use the word friend as an umbrella to encompass everybody that we come across?
Yeah, and I would build on that just with Chance as well. What made me start thinking about this topic was it was the opposite. Like, some days you'd be like, yeah, I don't want to go to school. Nobody likes me. I don't have any friends. And I just thought it was interesting that as a 4-year-old, he's already talking about just the dynamics of relationships. So for me, as his mother, I want him to be able to either listen to this episode or be able to just teach him like where friends really fall, because a lot of times in life you could think somebody is cool with you and they not, and then you're dealing with so much rejection, heartache, and all this, and you really don't have to if you understand how things work.
Exactly. So this led us on a journey to really start doing some research and exploration to figure out, you know, what types of friends are there. You know, our first assumption was that, you know, friends either fell into a category, you're a close friend or you're somebody there that's just for utility. So, of course, like any other episode, we thought of an idea and then just Googled that and see what articles we could find. So we Googled friendships of utility, and what we found was Aristotle actually came up with 3 classes of friends.
Yeah, so Aristotle has 3 types of friends that he talks about, and it's a friendship of utility, a friendship of pleasure, and then a friendship of the good. So usually your friendships are going to fall into one of those 3 buckets.
So we're going to spend a little bit of time and dive through each one. So what we'll do is we'll actually start off with the 3rd level of friendship, which is friendship for the good, which is kind of your deepest, most intimate level of friendship that's based on mutual respect and admiration. There's nothing transactional about this friendship. There's nothing about this relationship. It's kind of timeless and more or less unconditional, and it's not based on, you know, your social status, your monetary status, anything like that. It's really based on who you are as a core, as a person, and how that other person feels about you as a core, as your person, and you feel the same way about them. So, you know, from where I sit, you know, my spouse falls into that, you know, right now, you know, I would say all the groomsmen in my wedding fall into that category. But the older I get, it's harder to find more people that fall into that one.
Well, I think the older you get, it's like when you're a teenager, or even maybe in college, a lot of your friends you think fall into the friendship of the good just because of proximity, however you say it, but just you're close to each other. You're always doing stuff together. You see each other literally 8 hours a day at school, and you really value your friends at that time. So you think everybody's just your bestie, and then out of nowhere, it's like 2 years pass and you just stop talking, and it's hard for you to understand why. So I think a lot of like school friendships are utility, not friendships of the good.
Absolutely. You know, I think you find that it's hard to have a friend that you start off with, whether it's in grammar school, as we call it here in Chicago, or as you go all the way through college and even into your professional career and your adult life. You have very few people that have what they call their day ones. And if you do, you know, you might have been a crew of 6 or 7, and by this time you're a crew of 3 that occasionally sees the other person. And guarantee you, you know, somehow or another, you're not even invited to one of those people's weddings somehow along the way. So, you know, you think about that friendship for good, like you have very few of those friendships. And reality is, you know, the unfortunate thing right now is a lot of spouses don't even fall into that category. You fall into one of the other 2. So we'll dive into that a little bit more as we go. But, you know, your friendship for the good are your hardest friends to find, and it takes the longest to cultivate that type of relationship. But once you get there, once you have that, those are the people through thick and thin. Those become your children's godparents. Those become the people that just really hold you and your family down. And as your family grows, they're happy to see it grows. They don't resent your spouse. They're actually happy to have a new member in the family because they see you happy. So it's important that you kind of understand, like, you have very few people that fall into this category in your life. Really, if you have more than 6 or 7, you probably need to reevaluate because it's not real, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I would just say, too, the friendship of the good, that the definition, too, is that it's based off of friends that you have mutual respect. So that key word is mutual. So you might really, hold this person in a high regard and, like, love being around them. And to you, it could be a friendship of the good, but the other person might not respect you on an equal playing field or in the same way that you respect them. And that's when it can get a little bit tricky. Like, Coley, can you think of like an example of that where it might not be just like that mutual respect in the friendship?
I feel a lot of times, I think what I've found in my life and what I've observed is a lot of people will find people to hang around. Like, it's always that joke where you have a cute girl who who's a perfect 10 or 8 or whatever she is, and she hangs around a bunch of 3s. You have a lot of people who don't have that mutual respect because they don't see you at their same level, but they like you to be around them because you help, in their mind, you're helping elevate them. I feel like that's an example of that type of situation. Or you have that friend and you always cool with them as long as you don't make more money than them, you're not more successful than them. Like, they're fine with you in that lane. But as you start to ascend, like, that dynamic changes.
Yeah, and I think that's like those type of friends, that's where it goes into the friendship of pleasure. Because if something shifts and, like, we're not necessarily trying to use you like utility, but it's like if something shifts or something happens, that's when things can, like, change.
Yeah, Joy, you want to take our listeners through friendships of pleasure and kind of break that down for us a little further?
Sure. Well, yeah, people, I think when you hear the word pleasure, you just automatically think of like FPs, fucking buddies. Excuse my French. But no, just kidding around. But you just think about, like friends with benefits or whatever it might be. I mean, the friends with benefits does sum it up. It's just like your friend, but you could be like a mom group and you just enjoy like seeing your kid play with somebody that actually likes your kid. So you're like friends with that mom, but it's really more about you and like your kid. It's not like more than that. You don't want to be besties with that mom.
Yeah. Friends of pleasure, that relationship is built more off of mutual interest. And there is some level of enjoyment that you get from each other, but it's that mutual interest that keeps you going. So mom's group, I feel like our social circle has expanded to include a lot more friends of pleasure, being parents just with other parents. And it's solely based off our kids being friends. There's people that we're now meeting and encountering, and it's dope to meet new people. And they've come into our life because of our children. You also have, friends that you might have had for a long time, that you might have fallen just out of contact with, but you have something in common, whether it's a yearly sporting event, a yearly drinking outing, a yearly whatever it is. Those friends are the type of people that bring you pleasure because there's something outside of yourself bringing you pleasure, and you can share that with each other. And there's a lot of things that do that, like, whether it's music, it's the arts, it's just having like somebody to go to lunch with or go to dinner with, sports, all those things together. Your softball team, there's some people, you might suck at softball, but you have a good time doing that together. So you think about that pleasure, it's not purely being a fuck buddy, it's about the sum total of everything that you guys bring to the table for each other based around this shared mutual thing.
I 100% agree. I just think like when you think about the parenting thing, I think sometimes it's just like you used to, before you had kids, you could hang out with your single friends. Now you can't hang out with them like you used to because they don't get it. And then sometimes your kid just becomes a hindrance. So you just looking for like a place you can go to that's safe where you can let loose and have fun. And if that happens to be with other people who have kids, like that's where you're gonna go. So it's just like commonality. But I know that for a fact the friends of pleasure, those friendships can be kind of like iffy too, because if you move away, if something changes, or like you said, your status changes, like those friendships can fall apart. Like the most lasting friendship is the friendship of the good. So friendship of pleasure can also end just suddenly and quickly too.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And that brings us to kind of the most basic common form of friendship, which is friendship of utility, which as an adult, most of your relationships that you have, both personally, professionally, romantically, are somehow or another based on that. And as it simply stated, it's a friendship of utility. It's purely transactional. I provide X, you provide Y, and our relationship is purely based on that. Once that X goes away, it's gone. So if I have money and I spend money on you as a young lady, the relationship is gone as utility. If I stop having money, and then the relationship stops. Or if it's a relationship, purely based on me being able to provide sporting event tickets, whatever it is, that's a purely transactional, a relationship purely based off of utility. It's pretty simple.
I think it seems as if it's simple, but I still think that it's not as simple as you might think, because I mean, a lot of people have friends who just like use you, but you just don't realize you're getting used.
Yeah, and I think that's where it gets tricky. I think if you don't go in with open eyes, understanding and realizing what your situation is, it can go really sideways. Because what happens is in these friendships of utility, one person gets really invested in the relationship, or they're investing something tangible, whether it's their time, money, resources, their relationships with others. Like usually at least one of the people in that relationship, probably, more than the other, has created a one-side thing where there's an investment into a relationship. So no longer do you have just something that you can just let go of. Once if you're dating, and it's easy to go back to dating. If you're dating a girl and you're already 400 in on dates, you're not going to be as willing to walk away as you would be for the person you just you bought a drink with at the bar. You know what I'm saying?
$400?
That's easy. That's easy. Like, I know you wouldn't know because you don't. Your arms get kind of short when that bill comes. But movie tickets are $15 a piece. Movie tickets are $15 a piece. That's $30. You each get something to eat, and that's something basic. I call it another $15 a person. You at $60. The movie hasn't even started. Oh, you thirsty? Oh, that's another $6 a person. Like, you at $72. You haven't got past the trailers yet. Like, that's 72 in, and that's date one. Lord forbid you say, yeah, let's get something to eat, then go to the movies. So you're going to a semi-decent dinner. That's going to hold you back 60 to 80, depending on how many drinks you do and whatever. So that's just date one. It's about $150 for a decent first date. You can do it cheaper if you do a happy hour, do a coffee meetup, but you're about $1 to $150 in, depending on what you're doing on a first date. So you're going to do that at least twice. And then after that, you're going to keep going. So, yeah, 400 is it. That's easy. That's it. Shit.
All right. Well, I would just say.
I was about $600-700 in, and I didn't want to lose that money. That's why I just said, you know what, I'm going to marry her.
Oh, please. Well, I would say, are you done or are you finished?
I'm just getting started.
Anyways, I'm going to just say, but that's interesting, though, because the female could be like, oh, man, this is like a friendship of pleasure. I'm having a great time. Like, he's whining and dining me. And then it's really just utility, because the dude is just doing this so that he can hit it and quit it, and then the girl be hurt, and then it's just like a vicious cycle. Like, you thinking y'all both having a good time, and it's just utility in the end. So it's
I mean, I think that's the larger point. Like, all friendships start with utility. It's on, again, I think it starts with utility, and then it can evolve all the way to a friendship of good. Yeah, like, it's that friendship of good that you can get to over time, but it has to start somewhere. Like, no matter what, it starts with that utility, and then you build off of that. And I think we're gonna spend the rest of the show giving some examples in our life of all these types of relationships and the evolution and what we've seen and observed.
So I would say, Coley, that's interesting. So let's talk about this further. So what would you feel if all friendships start out with utility? And I just feel like, one, like if you listen, you should just focus on that, because a lot of people, it's frowned on to be like, oh, they using me. But if you look at life that way, like, okay, every person I meet might be using me for some reason, and it could grow into something more. You might not invest so much into people, and you just might not take stuff so personal. So all I'm trying to say, my question to you is like, what would you feel are the signs that it has of utility, or signs of that it could grow into something more? What do you think?
I think when there's an actual give and take on both sides. If it's purely, if you're purely taking and the other person's giving, or you're giving and the other person's taking, I feel that's where your relationship and your friendship, and I'm using air quotes, I think that's when you realize it's utility. And it's not all like physical things. Like you might have a friendship with somebody because they have a lot of knowledge, so you just want to hang around people because they're always dropping jewels, and you just want to be able to take those jewels so you can take them to your friends of good and seem smarter. So you have relationships that are based off of that, but you're not necessarily providing any knowledge or anything new to that person. You might have another friendship that's based on that in my experience, you have another friendship that's purely based on just companionship. Like we don't think about it that way. I feel like that's where a lot of your adolescent and childhood and teenage friendships start from. Like, yo, I don't want to be the one kid with no friends here, so I'm a fuck with you because I know like you'll fuck with me back. Like you'll talk to me in the hallway, or I'll have somebody to eat lunch with. Whether I eat lunch with you next year, we'll see. But at least you had that like down packed. So utility isn't all about material things and sucking things away. It's it could be about that companionship. It could be about not being alone. It could be about gaining knowledge. It could be about resources like money, or somebody has a space you want to use, whatever that may be. But I think that you just have to recognize like what's the level of give and take. And if you're always giving, the other person's taking, or you're always taking and not giving, more than likely you're in a friendship of utility.
Yeah, and you could be in a friendship of pleasure too, where you think like you're always giving and the person is always taking, but you could have some level of insecurity within your own self where you want to fix somebody and you get pleasure out of like somebody needing you. Like what is it, like the sister mom or whatever you say, or you want to like take care of somebody else. You want them to kind of look up to you and need you, and that gives you some type of like pleasure. But once the person doesn't need you anymore, that relationship just ends.
Yeah, and that goes, yeah, and people might use you for status. Like if you can help somebody climb the status ladder, like that's a real thing. Like people use people for that. You might not realize it, but like it's happening. So and I don't think there's anything wrong with friendships of utility. Like to be honest, like your coworker is more than likely a friend of utility, right? Like whether you're friends with them because they know what to do when the printer gets jammed, or you're friends with them again because you want to have somebody that you can walk down to the food trucks with for lunch, or you just want somebody that you could talk to at 3:00 when you at the water cooler. Like a lot of your when you look at a lot of your coworkers, and they're probably a friend of utility, right? They're in your life because there's proximity, there's time together, but it's utility. That's why you can be at a job for 10 years and you leave there. You've met hundreds of people and you leave there. You stay in contact with 3 of them. And there's again, to me, there's nothing wrong with that, right? Because there's no hate or animosity or malice. It's just the course of human nature. And then as you moved on to what's new in your life, you're going to develop more friends of utility. But it's all about kind of just keeping that, in my mind, just keeping that network open and not being an asshole as you kind of move through your different friendships and your different waves of people.
Yeah, it's because we did a lot of Aristotle research, but I know one of his quotes is like, "A friend to all is a friend to none," and it's just like something to think about. And it's also like, hey, like what's going on with you that you feel so strongly that you do need these people. And I think that's a key component that people don't want to face. They want to be like, oh, this one of my friends, they did me so bogus. But it's like, you have to think back, like, was I a good friend? Because people could just be using you for the information you have, or you're like a gossip, and they always meet you for lunch on Fridays, and you think, oh, we besties, they want to hang out with me, but they just trying to get information from you for something else. So it's just like, are you a good friend in return? Because I feel you too attract what you are.
That's 1,000% accurate. So just kind of like thinking about it's funny you bring this point up. If you go to friends of pleasure, I think about that a little bit, like especially in the work in a professional setting, or you and I, we do improv at Second City. When you're around people, it's very easy to create a friendship of pleasure, because the thing that's in the center of it all is your work or your employer or the activity you're doing, the studio you're recording your podcast, whatever it may be. Like, it's easy to like start that friendship and actually think it's deeper than what it really might be, because you have that shared thing. But as you peel back the layers, you have to examine, like, how close am I with this person? Is the only thing we ever talk about is work, and then every now and then we talk about family and what's going on? Or do we, does this person care? Like, how does that all kind of come together? So I think that's an important distinction, because I just said most of your coworkers are going to be friends of utility, but the friends of pleasure is that fine line, because you do have a common interest, be it the setting that your friendship is starting from.
Yeah, you might be having a good time while you getting used. So you thinking this, you having fun, y'all kicking it, but they really just like using you. And
but you're using them too, though, because
true.
It's like, it's happy hour, right? It's anybody but like going home to your kids. So you know what? I'm glad I got somebody who's just gonna sit here.
Yeah, let me drink this wine. I don't care.
Yeah, I got somebody I can drink this cocktail with, and we going cool. So it's it's not just a world where you're a victim and you're being used, because listeners, you're using people as well, and it's okay. All we're asking that we all do is just acknowledge where people fall within those circles, so you don't get hurt feelings when things go left or when things go right. We just want to help manage expectations, because I think it's, at age 37, we're both just now starting to realize where people fall within our circle. And to really help you figure out where things are, you should get married. And then to really help you know where people are, be married with kids, because like things are just gonna kind of fall the way they fall, and you'll get a better read of what of who's who and what's what.
Just like sometimes when you with your friends, just sit back and just listen to what they saying. Are they only talking about themselves? Do they ask you? That's something I started to notice. Like, wait, this person ain't asked me like one question about myself. They either talking about like all their problems, and the only stuff that they know about me is stuff I just try to get out there. Because I feel like a lot of times that's what I was just trying. So I wanted attention so bad. I was just like, hey, look at me, like talk to me or whatever it may be. But if you sit back and just listen, it's like, wait, this person just wants somebody to listen to them. They just want to talk. Like, people love talking about themselves. That's it. They just, and if you can see them, they can think you're their best friend just because you're like asking them questions about themselves, and you could not care about them at all.
1,000%. And then on the flip of that, though, what we're learning is a lot of people like to be the center of attention. So some people, like you said, are information gathering or fact finding or trying to troll for some gossip. So they'll be around you and just ask you questions about you to get you talking and try to get information and to get knowledge and to get insight and secrets from you, so they can then use it with their circle of friends that they're closer with as well. So it works both ways, because sometimes you're like, this person's using me, and sometimes you're using them because you have a captive audience. And I think that's one thing that people underestimate. You feel like a friendship is one-sided. That other person can come back like, listen, you do all the talking. I just sit here and listen to you talk and blab all the time about what's wrong with your life and what's wrong with your husband and what's wrong with your job. But like the reality is like you complaining all the time. I'm just here listening. You think I'm using you. Like we using each other. And use is such a harsh word because it comes off as if there's malice intent from the beginning, middle, and end. But it just is what it is. That's just what life is. There's over 6 billion people on earth. Like you don't have time to sit back and form a genuine relationship and connection and care about a whole person with everybody you meet. You just got to kind of get in and see where people fit. And if you want to fuck with them, you fuck with them.
So let's we could talk about too, like how do you feel social media plays into all this?
I feel like what social media has done, I feel, I think it allows you to feel or elevate a friend to a category above where they may be because you know what's going on in your life. I have people that I haven't spoken to in 3 years, but know both of our children's name, know we have a podcast, know 3 or 4 trips that we've done, and we haven't spoken in years, but for what it's worth, they feel closer because they've seen all of that stuff posted on IG or Facebook. So I feel like social media has created, in some ways, this kind of net of feeling like your circle is closer than what it really is, just because people have knowledge. And I think it's a tricky thing because you can get that information so casually. And when those opportunities and times when rubber meet the road and you need somebody, like, where are they? And I think that's what social media doesn't get to you. Again, social media is good for knowledge. Like I know, like there's stuff I haven't talked to people from high school in 6, 7, 8 years, but I know everything that's going on with them. They've been married, they moved, they weight loss goals, like the fact that, you know what I'm saying? And it's like, it also when you see them, it's almost like you don't even know how to talk to them because it's like, I really don't need anything from you because I already know everything that you're doing. So I feel like social media is almost like the ultimate spoiler alert that doesn't encourage like that human connection anymore. So I think a lot of friendships and people's circles are really in disarray right now because of social media. What's your takes on that? What's your take on that?
No, I mean, well, with the social media, I just think it can go either way because I feel sometimes you could stay in a friendship or in a relationship with somebody longer, too, because you see them on social media and you're like, oh, we do have stuff in common. They posted a picture of the Wu-Tang concert. I like Wu-Tang. We are friends. But it's just like in person, y'all really ain't that close. Or I don't know. I just think that people just social media allows people to create imaginary stories about each other.
Yes.
And it's just like, you think you're friends, you think you're close, or you're like, oh, when I actually for real see this person, we're going to have a lot to talk about because we have so much in common, but it's curated.
Yeah.
So it's an imaginary story.
I think I like that word curation because you're letting people in to know what you want them to know and how you want them to know it. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's, I think it's very tricky, and I think it's led to more hurt feelings than what people realize. So, so just, again, when you think about somebody in the role in their life, like just because you're close on social and you see their posts, like, figure out where they really stand. Like, if they went to a Wu-Tang concert and you were at that same Wu-Tang concert, ask yourself, like, damn, why didn't we roll together?
Or why didn't they hit me up? Like, I'm here too.
Yeah.
Shit, y'all both there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then be like, wow, I thought I was, or look at it like, damn, I knew they like Wu-Tang. I knew they were probably going. Why didn't I hit them up? I didn't want to deal with them. You know what I'm saying? So I think it works. I think it works 2 ways. So I think that social media is dangerous. Yeah. Let me ask you a question. How do you feel, kind of going through college and going through the Black Greek experience?
Oh.
How do you feel the fraternities and sororities? What's your evaluation on those relationships and friendships born out of that?
Oh, well, that's interesting. I am a member of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated, and I would say Theta Zeta chapter, Marquette University. I would say the Greek life just is more Parallel just to like family life, it's like one of those where we call each other sisters, we call each other brothers, and all this, and then you keep saying it like we're a family, but it's just like you really kind of don't know people, and in some ways, like it might be a friendship of utility because it's like your line sisters. It's like y'all call each other sisters, but y'all are using each other so y'all could cross. Like this is utility. If after the fact y'all not super duper close, it's okay. But would it be nice? It's cool y'all have a common like thing in common so that it can go between pleasure. I feel like in sororities and fraternities, you literally are gonna have all three, and some of them could become really a friendship of good, and then it's just like it's an example of where you're gonna encounter all three all at once.
Absolutely. I think as a member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, Delta Kappa chapter, Marquette University, Milwaukee citywide.
Okay.
I think
I'm sorry to interrupt.
I think for me, like, I'm, obviously, on this show, we've talked about love and loyalty. And I think, the thing with love is love comes with proximity. For me, not being in the city where my chapter is, where my, all my LB and, all my pro fights and all the neos that came after me and not being around them, I feel for me, like my connection to the bond and within the chapter isn't as strong as it would be if I was in town. So, this whole idea of proximity, bringing, just love and kind of this thing of mutual interest and a friendship of, like you said, utility or pleasure, like it spans the gamut. And I think if I was in Milwaukee, I would feel probably like I had more friendships of pleasure, and I feel like I would have that feeling of having more of them. But since I'm not there, I feel it's not there, and it's completely contingent on college, because that 4-year period or 5-year period when you're in school, I feel like that's just a unique time in life. Like my roommate freshman year, I haven't spoke to him like since freshman year. I've seen him, I've head nodded, whatever. But we haven't spoken since then. But we lived together in a fucking 12 by 12 box, for 10 months. And there was some like loyalty and love and trust that we had during that time, but it dissipated after that. So I think, when you think about your friendships and your circles, really examine, like, was this a friend that I would have if I had my choice and if I was in my own destination of choice? A lot of times the answer is no, but a friendship of convenience and a friendship of proximity, I feel, is one and the same. And I feel like when you think about Greek life, whether it's Black Greek life or any Greek life or organization, I feel that really starts to become applicable. The beautiful part about Black Greek life is you can easily pick it up and you can easily start to form other bonds with people, that's in the bond with you, and start to build those again more easily. So I think it becomes more or less your universal icebreaker that lets you break through some of that, so you can start to form like immediate friendships of utility without having to fill each other out for, a few months before you even get to that point. Because, again, I think a friendship of utility is not a bad thing. There's nothing wrong with having a transactional friendship. And I think what these Greek letter organizations do is provide you that way in. It's a network, and I think the art of networking is something that's lost on people, and like, you don't have to be best friends with anybody. You just gotta just know somebody and not be mean.
Yeah, just like show, like, I mean, there's a scripture like show yourself friendly. And like it goes a long way. Like you ain't got to be best friends with somebody. A lot of people you meet are associates, but I just think everyone does start with utility just because you don't trust people. And some people are, you want them to be a good friend, but they have their own trust issues. So you're never going to get to the friendship of good because they just won't let you. So you might as well, like, sometimes it's time to just recognize, like, you know what, accept it. Like, this is where we're going to be. I wish we were, like, a stronger friend, but, like, they don't trust me and maybe you don't trust them, because in hindsight, just not talking about the Greek life any further, but just like in life, I just think people got mad secrets. And it's like, you got to look back and be like, do I really know like this person? Do I really know like what's going on with this person? It's like people who I thought we were pretty good friends, and then you just move away or whatever happens, so you don't talk in a long time. Then you might find out from somebody else what was going on in their life, and it's like, dang, they had mad secrets. Like, I had no idea.
And I think it's what's funny is with secrets comes shame. So the irony is you might be in a friendship of good, but it's so good that person sometimes doesn't want to bring you a secret because they feel like harsh judgment might come from you if you do that. So I think that's the key thing. And that's why, like, and I know I'm severely guilty of this, especially during my college years, of being very judgmental and elitist. I think it's making sure that, people feel like they have a safe place to land with you if you're their friend. Because I feel like if people feel like they can't tell you a secret without feeling even worse, or you're not going to help make it better, like, they don't want to fuck with you. And that's, I feel like, how things run up. Granted, it starts with their secret and their bullshit. I think, though, just as a friend in general, like, just figuring out ways not to be so harsh or judgmental. And I think for me, like, just as a parent, I'm working on that. So as my kids, they're going to do stuff I'm not going to like. They're going to do stuff I'm like, what the fuck? It's just a matter of taking that all in and being like, I need to be a safe landing place if I value this friendship, and I want them to know that. And I feel like that's something, with your friendships of good and even some of your friendships of pleasure, you got to keep in mind, like, being that safe landing place.
That sums it up, and that goes back to, like, are you a friend? Because I definitely don't think I have been, like, I confess, anybody I hurt your feelings, I was judgmental or not a good friend. Like, I was just, I want to say a shitty person, but I just wasn't a good friend to people. Like, if you going into a friendship and they telling you something, and then in your head you like, I would never do that. Like, you not really that, like, you ain't gonna get to the friendship of good from the jump because you already think you're superior in a way. Yeah. So in order to be like a friendship of good, it's like y'all both got to be willing to start at the same playing field and then grow from there. So I think that's like a key component. And just in this show, I just think it's important to realize, like, somebody might reject you, and you've probably rejected somebody, and, like, don't take it personal. They still might consider you like a good person, but maybe I just weren't a good match as a friend. I don't know.
Yeah. And the unfortunate part of life is it moves on, and sometimes time creates division, and sometimes you can come right back together like you never left, and because whatever conflict or issue that might be going on internally or externally, just time could heal all wounds. So in our last 10 minutes or so, let's get into, like, how do families fall within our circles? Because the saying always goes, you can choose your friends, not your families. So Joy, I'll let you kind of dive into this one, because I think, I think a lot of this is germane, because this thing started with our kids in terms of this conversation. I think with my dad passing and thinking about, like, where do my parents fall in this circle, and then with your family and just kind of the geography that you guys all have now and people moving around. I think it's interesting to get your take. How should we view family within these three levels of friendship, or do they fall in a completely separate category?
I don't know. I think family could fall into it, but I think a lot of people, well, it depends on your family. I know my family, and maybe it's a black family thing, but I don't want to generalize like that. Generalize, I should say. But I think just with my family, I feel that there's like a patriarchy, like, well, it should be matriarchy, because it's mainly like run by like black single females who are like the heads of household. So it's like, in their mind, you could never be their friend in the first place. And so it's kind of one of those, like, I don't know how it would fit, and maybe with the cousins or whatever, and or nieces and nephews, it always was like, y'all got to get along. Like, but it was just as a matter of they don't want no drama at Thanksgiving because y'all don't like each other. They just finna, like, most of your cousins or family members, when you look back, it's like y'all really didn't have nothing that much in common. The only reason y'all together is because your aunties wanted to sit up and, like, chat it up. And some people are close with their cousins, so it's hard to, like, speak on it. But I don't think it's a form. I feel like people feel more rejected by family. Like, oh, why don't they like me? Why don't they want to hang out with me? I feel like the level of rejection might be stronger from a family member than a friend. And that's when it can get tricky, even though the family member could just be using you, or y'all don't have nothing that much in common outside of blood relation.
Yeah. I feel like family, they almost, we spoke to Nadia Champ before the show. I mean, his take was family is almost something completely different, because you're blood. And I feel like, I agree and I disagree. I feel like as family, I think in my opinion, you love harder, but you judge harsher. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like, I feel like family members aren't interested in providing a safe landing spot for you. I feel like they're all about, like, get your shit together and you need to deliver. And I feel like that's universal. I don't care if you're rich or poor, black or white. I feel like there's just expectations on you to kind of deliver on what people have invested in you, or what opportunities and tools you've been afforded. So I feel like that's one dynamic with family, especially when you get down to your patriarchal and matriarchal kind of breakdowns, and you go from generation to generation. I feel like, aunts and uncles and some parents and grandparents aren't necessarily concerned with providing that safe landing place because they've made that investment from you since you were born.
And they have, like, their own separate families,
Correct.
It's like,
or even if they don't, like they've made that investment. Like, yo, why are you failing, or why can't you show up to work on time, or why do you have this whatever problem you're dealing with? Like, I feel like they're gonna be like this is a reflection on me and, like, the work I've put in. So, like, if you fucked up, that's a reflection on the quality of work I've been doing the last 25 years or however long. So they're not interested in the safe landing spots. I feel like they're worried about their own image. Secondly, I feel what we don't take into consideration with families is, like, that age difference that might be there. Not necessarily amongst yourself, but even from your parents. So you and your cousin might be the same age, but your parents might be 10 or 12 years apart. So, like, their perspective on things are going to be much different than what yours might be. So your expectations, your level of accountability, they're all going to be different. So for me, I feel like because of that, your family isn't going to become that friend that's necessarily there for pleasure or for good. I think they're going to be there because, like you said earlier, you have to be. You know what I'm saying? Like,
and I mean, just to build off the family, it's like, in some situations you may never, like, not talk to them a lot, or they might not know when your birthday is, or, like, that your two kids, they might literally, like, not know their name. But sometimes when it comes down to the thick and thin of it, like, they gonna come together either to support you if you really need it. Like, if somebody was sick, or somebody unfortunately passed, or it's like a wedding or something, like, they're gonna come together for those big things. But I just don't see them, like, I don't interact with my family as much as I might like a friend, if you're thinking about it like that.
But part of that's geography, part of that's the closeness you had in the first place. As we come to learn, like, certain family members, they have their own relationships and their own situations that they're doing that might not include you. So you might truly be a person of utility. I'm not even going to say friend, a person of utility. And you learn that for family members, that's more true than ever. Like, if you that quote unquote rich cousin or rich uncle or whatever that people think, like,
got it all together. Yeah.
People gonna fuck with you more when they need something. If you that person that if that person used to mess with your mom or dad, they might mess with them and not you necessarily. Like I found that like it's funny. Like people will come to a funeral, but it's more because they had their relationship with the deceased, not necessarily there for you. Like people will come to support, but like people will come more so like, man, I gotta make, they'll come for the all encompassing. I gotta make sure that I kind of pay my respects, and then I'm gonna see how this person's doing, that person's doing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I think with family, like family will, like we probably could do a whole show about family, but it's a little touchy. But I would just say family won't like mess with you. It'll be family members that won't mess with you based off of like something your parents said to their mom, and then they won't like fuck with you, and that's like telephone. They won't come and talk to you like, hey, is this really what's going on? But based off of something your parents said or another aunt might have said, and they could have like misheard, or they could like, there's so many fractions within families. Like two sisters could be not talking, and then all of a sudden now their kids not talking. It's just so many things that you just might not know what's going on.
Yeah. So maybe after this discussion, family is a completely separate bucket and a completely separate show, because there's just so many wires connecting everything, and there's levels and strings being pulled that it's really hard to just fit them into buckets of utility, pleasure, and good. So maybe that is another show.
But I think that people definitely start off trying to make you think it's of good.
Yeah.
Like, and that's when people, that's why to me in families, they split.
Yeah.
Like that, because even when you watching TV and you watching shows, it's all so much about family being close and everything is family. So then when yours isn't, you feel like something's wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that thing is like a house of cards. You blow one card away, the whole thing comes crumbling down. So we're going to wrap this up real quick. Just, remember, examine your circle, figure out if the people in your circle fall into a friendship of utility, a friendship of pleasure, or a friendship of good. Utility being just purely transactional and the lowest form of friendship. Friendship of pleasure being slightly higher with, a mutual interest being the driving force of the bond. And then your friendship of good, which is mutual respect, admiration, love, and loyalty to one another. And that's the highest form of friendship. Hardest and longest to develop, but definitely the most meaningful and what keeps life going. So
it's just that saying, like, the friendship of utility is you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. It's as simple as that. And I would just say, I'll just end with a quote since we already doing Aristotle on that task. I'm just end with that. So a quote from Aristotle is, the best friend is the man who, in wishing me well, wishes it for my sake. So when you think about your friends, it's like they could be wishing you well, but is it envy underneath that? Is it like, do they want something from you? They're like, oh, y'all podcast is coming up, and now all of a sudden they trying to holler at you, talk to you because they want to be on there. So they're not wishing you well for your sake. They're wishing you well for theirs. So it's a good friend when they're just wishing, like they're sincerely happy for you and they don't want nothing in return.
Absolutely. I think that's that quote and that last insight is a good way to wrap up. Before we go, we like to end every show with a segment called Things We Wish We Would Have Known. For that, I'll kick us off if you don't mind.
Go for it.
Biggest thing is I wish I would have known about these buckets of friends and understood, respected, and appreciated it and took it for what it is. I think that would make life a lot easier. I think that would have made relationships, romantic relationships, a lot easier. Just understanding that like having a friendship of utility, there's nothing wrong with that. Get what you need to get out of it and keep it moving. I think, there's a way to preserve your feelings, and hurt should only be reserved for those friendships of good. And when those people, if and when those people hurt you, like that's when the hurt should happen, not with a friendship of utility. Just invest your emotions, your time, and your resources into the right people and relationships, and keep the others for what they were. So I wish I would have knew that.
I agree with what you're saying. I think Something I wish I would have known a little bit more was just not look at superficial things with the friends you make. Just like, when I was a kid, my mom was just like, always try to be friends with the black kids first. It's based off of like they race or whatever. But those, like in the end, those would be the kids that was like smooth bullying me. So it's like, don't judge somebody just on something superficial and select them as your friend. That's something I wish I would have known. I wish I just would have looked at the person's works and been like, like no matter what their race, like let me give them a go. Let me try to be a friend with them and then see where it goes from there. So I just think don't base your friendships off of something superficial. That's something I wish I would have known.
No better way to wrap up and end this show. So that's Ain't Gonna Hurt Nobody podcast, episode 13. We out.